HowExpert Guide to Moths, 101 Plus Tips to Learn About, Save, and Educate Others About Moths by HowExpert with Jessica Dumas. If you want to learn about, save, and educate others about moths, then check out HowExpert Guide to Moths. Check out HowExpert Guide to Moths to learn about, save, and educate others about moths. If you want to learn about, save, and educate others about moths, then check out HowExpert Guide to Moths. HowExpert Guide to Moths, written by Jessica Dumas, is a guidebook that is packed with more than 101 plus fun facts and tips to learn about moths. In this guidebook, you will learn everything you ever wanted to know about moths. In addition, this book will be an eye-opener as to how important they are and why they should be appreciated as much as the butterflies. This guidebook has more about moths than an encyclopedia and is much easier to understand. It is not an official field guide normally used for identifying moths. However, you can use it along with your field guide for additional details that may not be in a field guide. You can use this book to teach children or anyone else interested in learning about moths. Some of the topics of this guidebook are as follows. Tips on who belongs to the Lepidoptera family. Tips on distinguishing a moth from a butterfly. Tips on how to identify different types of moths. Moth life cycle and stages of metamorphosis. Descriptions of body parts and their functions. Learn why moths are attracted to lights. Learn how to repel moths in your closets. Learn why there's a decline in moth population. Learn important reasons why moths matter. Learn how moths act as a gauge for the ecosystem. Tips on things you can do to help save moths. Tips on growing a moon garden for moths. Tips on being a mother and going mothing. Tips on niche science careers of studying moths. Tips on educating children and others about moths. There are several more fascinating topics included that will be fun to explore. You will not find other resources that compile all the most interesting and educational information about moths in one organized source like this book. Check out HowExpert Guide to Moths to learn about, save, and educate others about moths. About the author. Jessica Dumas is a freelance writer who was inspired to write about butterflies and moths because of her love for them. She has been a butterfly advocate who has been writing books and poems for over 10 years. She lives in a small mountain town in Arizona, but is originally from Minnesota, where she grew up in the country near the Mississippi River. At the early age of 11, she fell in love with butterflies, which inspired her to want to become a pilot. Years later, she met a flight instructor who taught her how to fly and opened the way to a love story. They married, had 3 children, and spent 30 years together. Butterflies inspired other dreams for her, such as having a business and becoming a writer. You can read her story in her book, The Captain, a memoir of life with the best flight instructor in LA County. Jessica's latest book is a follow-up of one she did called HowExpert Guide to Butterflies. She didn't want to leave out the butterflies' cousins, so she has now written this educational book with tons of facts about moths, as well as tips for learning how to help save moths from dying off. HowExpert publishes how-to guides on all topics from A to Z by everyday experts. Visit howexpert.com to learn more.